The generational impact of hate has been seen in history throughout wars, droughts, and the monotony of suburban life. The way it's been portrayed throughout cinema is interesting to study. The Truman Show provides an insight into the lives of consumers, as does A Wrinkle in Time. But when oppression is passed down generationally, how does it affect the youth in a more realistic way? I will be using the film genre of melodrama to compare two films which I feel showcase the suppression of hate and expectations in a beautiful yet saddening way. Haine, directed by Matthew Kassovitz in 1997, and Dead Poets Society, a film made in 1989, directed by Peter Weir. They both showcase the melodrama genre in two completely different ways, representing different ends of the socio-economic spectrum in different cultures. The stereotypical characters, two protagonist characters with no power, the sensationalized and the highly emotional plots are all characteristics of a melodrama. Through further analysis of symbolism and power dynamics, shown through specific editing techniques which differ in each movie, it can be seen that hate eventually breeds hate. Teenage life is tragic. At least that's what the media portrays. Dreams are painfully non-realistic, and eventually everyone has to fall in line. Dead Poets Society is a critically acclaimed film, showing the lives of a group of privileged teenagers attending a prestigious boys' school, the fictitious elite and conservative boarding school Walton Academy. I'll be focusing on one of the main protagonists in this film, Neil Perry. He is a student attending Walton Academy at his parents' desire. He is an aspiring actor, but must suppress these admirations due to the fact that Neil's father especially does not want him acting, but instead insists that he, quote, takes his life seriously and go into the medical field, end quote. The fact that parents choose to live vicariously through their children due to unfulfilled dreams is a way that hate is bred in the first place in this film. All the children are expected to go to this school and graduate with aspirations to, quote, change the world, or go to the best colleges to be someone deemed typically as a valuable member of society. This traditional value of success is one that is usually seen as a conservative view. Being kept away from the most invigorating joys such as arts, music, and the beauty of life is what is deemed normal. And that's where Mr. Keating comes into the scene. John Keating is a symbol in the boys' lives. Mr. Keating replaced the boys' English teacher, and when Mr. Keating started teaching them, he provided a new perspective and new views on life that the boys had known. Because of the conservative manner of the school, it was often not challenged against. Being an alum of Walton Academy, his free-thinking mind often encouraged the boys to leave their comfort zones and to rebel against the oppression they often face, to not blindly conform and to take the path less travelled, and most importantly, to have faith in themselves. Carpe diem, he often said, to seize the day in Latin. He inspired the boys and was kind of like a golden beacon, showing the boys to think about other paths they would have otherwise not thought about. He was always perceived in a neutral way. The boys were almost always at the same eye level as him, indicating that the boys were equal to him. To compare this power dynamic shown through cinematography with a different character, all the shots of Neil's father are shown in a way where he possesses much more power than anyone else in the frame.
Medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for.
Keating is portrayed as a very wise man in this film. He states at the end of the film,
There's a time for daring, and there's a time for caution, and a wise man understands which is called for.
though the character of Mr. Keating may be viewed as cliché, the ending of this movie is not typically expected. One would expect that all the boys go on to find the true meaning of life, to appreciate the arts, and to live through the beauty of life. But quite the opposite happens when the oppressed gets pushed to the absolute edge. The idiom hate breeds hate is a proverb. If you treat someone with anger, malice, or hatred, it will typically cause them to behave in a similar way to yourself or others. The span of Neil's acting career is short-lived, being quickly denied by his dad. He shows no support for his son's wishes, except that he shows up for Neil's final production of a Shakespeare play, A Midsummer's Night Dream. Neil was on stage, giving it his all, living the life of Puck. The shots that were chosen to be used for this very important scene were quite critical in showing even more the power that Neil's father had on him. Everyone in the audience, including his friends, is looking up to him on stage. He's pursuing his dream and his friends seem proud, and the positioning of the power dynamic is very crucial in seeing how this sense of pride fades away as soon as Neil's dad enters the scene. Though far away and on level ground, Neil's dad is still towering on top of Neil, even when it's meant to be his time to shine. Though for only an hour could he be someone that he truly wanted to be, when Neil's dad shows up, the mood of the film completely changes from inspiring to the mood that is ominous and makes us, as the audience, scared for the feedback that Neil will receive from his father. The magic of poetry is shown through symbolism in the boys' cave, the self-titled and proclaimed Dead Poets Society. This world that the boys discovered far away from the campus where the ideas were suppressed by the walls of the school is similar to the world that Neil was in A Midsummer's Night Dream. It's a world away from reality, not just physically, shown by the long shots when they were heading to the cave, but emotionally too, breaking free from the daily monotony that came from being stuck inside of Walton Academy. The symbolism of everything in the play, from the dawn rising as the dream fades, as he returns to reality, to the power positioning of Neil's father and how mesmerized the boys are by the art that Neil has shown. You take your dreams to the waking world, just as Puck represents in the play. He represents the difficulties of love and the power of magic while juggling the relationships between fantasy and reality, just as Neil is facing in real life. The play foreshadows Neil not fulfilling his dream, and as we find out what happens to Neil at the end of the film, the symbolism of Puck and the play altogether play a big part in the movie. He has one last moment in his dream, and it's the character of Puck. The last shot of Neil with the shadow of his true self, with the crown that Puck has on in the play. Neil tragically kills himself due to the oppression that he had experienced. His father's gun, also a symbol that it was essentially the father killing him, not only him, but his dreams too. Finding out that Neil had committed suicide was not only a shock to the boys, but Mr. Keating too, who couldn't help but feel guilty as he had been a big part of Neil's life and convinced him to pursue his passion for being an actor. A scene that was really beautiful to me was the shot of Todd tragically running out into the snow, the pure whiteness of innocence, the colour of dreams, seemingly running out into the unknown and unexplored, trying to get Neil back. The movie ends with a very powerful scene. A scene for me that perfectly captures and summarizes the very essence of standing up to oppression, overpowering that power dynamic that teachers normally held, and how maybe the cycle of hate breeding hate can be broken. It's a moment of triumph and hope, though defeated. To fully understand the extent to which hate breeds hate in a different type of community, we can look at the movie Haine, which portrays this in a completely different setting. Viewing this generational problem through a different lens is important as it shows us both sides of the coin. People wanted to address social inequality seen through police brutality and discrimination. Haine was seen as a very socially controversial film due to the flaws it brought up inside French society. Audiences thought that this movie was anti-police, but it never actually insinuated that the police as individuals were bad people, but the system put into place was the real antagonist in the film. The story follows three adolescent men who fall into the stereotypes of the main characters in Melodrama due to their background, Vince, Hubert, and Saïd, who are from the suburbs of Paris. The story is filled by police brutalities, specifically towards someone in their community, Abdel. Vince tells the others that he has found a gun that belonged to one of the police officers lost during the rioting. He intends to avenge Abdel if he is to die. The trio spend the day hanging out, which is clearly shown through timestamps on the screen. The audience always knows what time it is in the film, but it also creates a sense of urgency with the clock ticking noises. The movie follows their adventure throughout the city of Paris, starting with visiting a dealer, Asterix, who owes Saïd money. Vince engages the deal by pulling out his Glock, threatening Asterix. After leaving, Hubert and Saïd get arrested by the police. However, Vince gets away. After being released, they sleep at a shopping mall, but wake up to the news of Abdel's death. This shot is so prominent to me, showing all of the TVs with their backs facing towards the camera. At this point, Vince is filled with rage towards society as a whole, even threatening neo-Nazi skinheads with his gun. He's completely out of control. He does come to realize this though, handing the gun to Hubert for safekeeping after they get back to their suburbs. However, a car pulls up, and this leads to the tragic death of Vince after arguing with the man. The difference and foreshadowing of the opening shot, with Saïd opening his eyes centered in the frame, and the last shot being the same, is very significant. Saïd is very aware of the hopelessness that he's in, but he's unsure of what to do with it. Seeing the differences between social class in Haine and Dead Poet Society is very jarring. The suburbs, le banlieue, versus the highest class of society. This movie shows the system that puts less financially stable people at the bottom of the pyramid, blaming the lower class for everything so that the upper class could have the easiest way out. The movie starts off with the infamous Jusqu'ici tout va bien, Jusqu'ici tout va bien, meaning so far so good, so far so good, talking about the man falling from 50 stories. What counts is not the fall, it's the landing. And then the very dramatic world blowing and burning up. This immediately jump cuts into a montage of French riots in the 90s. The film ends with the same shot of the world blowing up, however, it now has a completely different meaning, referring to society as a whole. It was a tough time for France, with civilians full of rage against police and society. The shots used throughout this film give a sense of being trapped and powerlessness. It seems that the three protagonists cannot change anything about the world that they live in, which is shown through the shots that make them look very small, being consumed by their surroundings, just little pixels on the screen compared to a big world. There's this one shot when they first arrive in Paris, which utilizes the vertigo effect using dolly zoom. This shot shows you the scale of a big city like Paris, which they are very small. Another scene that stood out to me was the bird's eye panning shot, when showing the neighborhood during the song F the Police by NWA, and Non, je ne regrette rien by Edith Piaf. There are just endless buildings, just like an inescapable maze with copy and paste houses. Not only are these two songs very iconic, but they also represent the recklessness and the nonchalant nature of this neighborhood. It shows the attitude of these young adults against the police due to systematic violence. Something that stands out about the film is the use of black and white throughout the whole film, relying on values instead of colors, show the plain and simple world that they live in. But the things that happen may seem out of binary for us as an audience, but not for them. The sense of an us versus them concept is always seen throughout the film, even when faced by the media. There are parallels between Haine and Dead Poet Society, which can be seen through the oppressors, which is Neil's father, and in Haine, the police. Symbolism is clearly seen throughout both films. In Dead Poet Society, the crown, the snow, and the framing of each shot, and in Haine, the Eiffel Tower, the gun, and the police. Different social classes show hate differently, but the same driving factor is oppression. To be able to witness this through two very different films, portraying different social classes in different countries, shows the way that hate breeds hate, even in such contrasting communities. The generational impact of hate is bred differently throughout different communities, which can be clearly seen after careful analysis of Haine and Dead Poet Society.